Hi, I'm Lior, a product manager for Salto, and today I'm going to show you how to use Salto to manage your ScriptRunner scripts. I'm going to show you how to do some impact analysis, essentially making sure that when you change Jira, you don't break your ScriptRunner scripts. And then I'm going to show you how you can safely deploy these scripts across Jira instances. For example, from your sandbox to your production environment, or between any two other instances. But before we dive into Salto, let me show you Jira itself. I've prepared some workflow in my sandbox that uses ScriptRunner. So for example, this workflow called production workflow has some post function called notify SLA users, which on some condition which relates to some custom field sends a message to some users. A very common pattern in ScriptRunner. Now let's see how this workflow looks like in the Salto platform. So this is Salto. I've connected a few Jira environments to my Salto platform, and we look at Sandbox because that's where we implemented this workflow that we want to see. Salto automatically pulls all the configuration items, which you can see here. So let's search for our workflow. There it is. So when I click it, Salto shows you the contents of this workflow. And specifically, let's dive into transitions because that's where our post function is. I want to show you how it looks like. And inside this done transition, I see there's a post function, and I can actually see the entire post function, including the code itself, the condition, and all the other details about this post function. Now, this is really cool because it means that Salto has complete visibility to all your scripts. So for example, if you want to check where inside my entire Jira configuration is this value urgent SLA used, I can just search for it. Let's do that for a second. And I can do a content search, which shows me that there are a few places. Some automations, some fields. That's actually the field where this option is defined, and I can actually see multiple workflows and scripts, ScriptRunner scripts, which use this field value. So this is really useful. Before you make any changes to a field, you can search for all places in which the values are being used. Another super useful feature is the ability to see what does this workflow and scripts depend on. So you've already seen that our transition and post function use some fields, but we can show that for the entire workflow. So at the bottom of this workflow, you see depends on. And you can actually open these and see that this script, and specifically the ScriptRunner scripts within it, require and use a field called SLA level and a group called SLA notification users, and maybe some other things. This is going to be very useful when we deploy this script across environments because we're going to need these things as well. By the way, this is all recursive. So if I now jump to the field, I can see the actual custom field. And now I can see which other elements other than our production workflow use this field. So for example, I can see that there's some Jira automation which uses this field as well. The last thing which I want to show you today is how we can take this workflow from Sandbox and safely deploy it to our production environment. Safely deploying it means that I deploy it together with all its requirements. So if one of these fields or groups or anything else which this script uses does not exist in production, we'll need to deploy that as well. Let's see how Salto does that. So we'll start a new compare and deploy operation, deploying from my sandbox to production, deploying production workflow. And now what Salto does is it compares these two environments, essentially showing you all the differences, all the things which, for example, exist in your sandbox environment but don't exist in production. So let's look at additions. Additions are the things which we can add to production, which exist in Sandbox, but not in production. So if I open workflow, I see production workflow over here. Let's select this for deployment. What you immediately see is that we have some problem here, some issue that we have to fix. This element has some unselected required dependencies which may prevent it from being deployed. Let's see what they are. Okay, so I can see that the SLA level custom field and the SLA notification users group are both things which are needed for this workflow to be deployed correctly and do not exist in production. So I can just select both of these and add them to my deployment. So now I have the original workflow, but I'll also deploy together with it this field and this group. But I'm not done yet. We still have one missing dependency. Let's see what it is. Okay, so for the SLA level field that we're deploying, there's also a context which we'll need to move. So let's select this. And we're done. Okay, we have 4 selected elements, the field, its context, one group, and the main thing, our production workflow. Let's preview our deployment. What Salto does now is it checks that this deployment can be safely done. There are no warnings or errors or clashes that will prevent this deployment from going through. Let's see. Okay, so I selected 4 deployment elements. All of them are ready for deployment. All there's left to do is to click deploy. Okay, so Salto is now deploying these elements using the Jira Cloud API to our Jira production environment. Let's see what happens. And that's it. I have 4 elements which were successfully deployed. Let me show you on Jira. If I jump to my production instance, this workflow did not exist until now, but let's refresh this, and ta-da! The production workflow now exists in my production environment, and it was deployed here along with the status and everything else which is required. That's it. Thank you very much, and we hope to see you using Salto soon.